Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Max McCabe. He's going to be talking about his experiences with UAP and the resulting effects. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this video belong solely to the speakers and not necessarily to UAP Medical Coalition, its employees, volunteers, or affiliates. All medical references are for informational purposes only. This is not a consultation or therapy session. This content can be triggering for some and is not meant for children. Max, thank you for coming today. Can you please tell people briefly about who you are?
Thank you for having me, Debs. My name's Max McCabe. I'm 45 years old. I'm a father of four, two boys, two girls, and a grandfather to five. I'm currently a construction site manager in the UK. I'm based in Peterborough in East Anglia in England, and I've been here in the same house for coming up to 10 years now.
Wow, that's very detailed. Thank you. Can you please tell people about your UAP encounters briefly?
Yeah. Um, so it happened here in this house where we still are today. Um, what I've come to find out is it actually affected quite a number of neighbours as well, and it's been happening for quite some time. So it wasn't just us; even it impacted our next door neighbour as well. I only found that out last year. So in 2014, my daughter and a neighbour's daughter, they were friends, had seen some balls of light up in the sky, not high up, but quite low down, making patterns, formations, and blinking out and shooting off. She told me the next day because I was asleep at the time, and that following night I was up really late working on some website stuff. And so what happened to me was I'm sitting in the garden before going to bed, early hours of the morning. There was a double flash of white light in the sky. As I was thinking, could this be lightning? There was another double flash of white light. I looked straight up, and two balls of white light traveling side by side were maybe 70, 100 feet up, not high. Um, they broke to my left at a right angle, turned and shot off so fast. It was just literally like a bullet out of a gun speed, leaving a trace line. So I ran through the house thinking must be what my daughter had seen with the neighbor the night before. And as I'm outside, I gave up looking after a few minutes and came back inside because they would have been gone by then. So I come back into the house to go to bed. But it's as I'm heading upstairs, I was struck with an intense, very powerful, what can only be described as a telepathic instruction. It wasn't a voice, but incredibly uh, precise. And my mind unraveled it into an instruction of don't close the door, go outside and look up. And the hair on the back of my neck had stood up. It felt physically as if it touched my brain. I recognized it as not coming from my own thoughts. It had come in from elsewhere. It was a very unique sensation in itself. And out of curiosity, I opened the door, step outside, and look up. And as I stepped out over the door, the most beautifulest thing I've ever seen in my life. Huge, maybe 30-foot uh, object moved out from over the house and stopped above me, only about 70 to 80 feet up. Um, and this thing was as if I originally described it as a horizontal diamond shape. But if you took a disc and tilted it towards your viewing angle, it had shards of light emanating from the center vertically above and below it that were moving. They were retracting and extending in a really bizarre fashion, and all around the edging was as if it was slow motion flames flickering, almost as if it was setting the air on fire around the perimeter of the object. A golden light more towards the edges. So I've stepped out. I'm looking up this thing completely gobsmacked, but I was struck with an incredibly strong feeling of static electricity all over, which put all the hairs on my body on end, tingles up and down my spine over my scalp. I'm not only in shock and awe, but I had an incredibly powerful feeling of intimacy, of being observed, and as if it could read my thoughts, as crazy as that sounds. It was very unique, almost tangible feeling. A feeling of love and joy, which brought tears to my eyes, seemed out of place. And it was like I was in a complete vacuum. I've never heard such lack of sound, completely and utterly silent. All I could hear was myself breathing. So I'm looking up at this thing. I didn't know what to do. I wave, and after a few moments of just literally awkward silence and bewilderment, I realized this could be dangerous because of the electricity in the air. So I thought I should shout out for people. I looked around, figured that if I get zapped by discharge or something, because I don't know if this is dangerous, nobody's going to know what's happened to me. So I considered running into the house, grabbing someone, considered shouting out. It all felt very inappropriate. And I didn't want to run inside and miss this thing, whatever it is. And then I realized my phone's in my pocket. But just as I thought about my phone, maybe taking a video or a photo, this thing starts to move left. So that I start running after it, walking, then jogging, then running as it speeds up, curves to my right, starts to go higher and higher, faster and faster as it goes higher and higher away from me. So I stood back and watched it. A completely clear, crystal clear night, not a cloud in the sky. And this thing goes up and up and up and up until it literally looks so far out of sight in the upper atmosphere that it's out of, can't see it anymore. So I was in shock and awe, and I walk in the house completely baffled and confused, thought I'd lost my mind, but I knew that it happened, it was real, until my girlfriend woke up and I was a complete blubbering wreck. It came back for 2 more nights. Came back in a different direction, just over here to us, gliding across the rooftops. I'd stayed up hoping it would come back, tried to wake my girlfriend up, she wouldn't get out of bed. And it went off, turned, and off it went up into the upper atmosphere again. The third night, I was lucky enough to have my girlfriend with me. A little bit later on in the morning, the blue was coming through and it came down from the sky at a really high. I caught it just as it was coming straight down and stopped. She saw it with me. Completely unique, the type of light that comes from this thing. And then it zip-lined off up into the east, southeast. Um, After that, there was a whole succession of different experiences with different types of objects over the next 3 years. This thing went on for a while, but as magnificent as it was on the first, second, and third night of this object coming back, um, it actually took a dark turn. And over the period of everything that happened, we became extremely concerned. It was extremely upsetting because it became scary. Although I look at it much more differently now. I'm very, very glad it happened. I'm thankful that I had those experiences, but at the time it wasn't fun at all. So I had a red ball of light hanging over a power line. I pulled my car over about 9 o'clock at night one night, wondered what on earth it was. This was 2 weeks after the first 3 nights. It blinked out when I went to take a picture. I got out my car, took my phone out. The thing just completely collapsed in on itself. But it was sat right over the high tension power lines near here, just down the road. After that, me and my girlfriend were in the garden and we started to have these dark incidences happen. Mid conversation, everything goes pin drop silent. We stopped talking. We were in a good mood, you know. Everything goes silent and pounding heavy footsteps. Two things, bipedal by the sounds, the way it walked, whatever it was, come towards us. I froze solid in my chair, and I've never had that happen to me before. She got up and ran inside. She was so scared. And I sat there gritting my teeth. And just as this, whatever these things are in front of me, they're right in front of me, several feet away, but there's nothing to see. It's invisible. the feeling lifts, all the background sounds come back. That concerned me because it felt so extremely negative and dangerous, as if something out of a horror film or a nightmare was seeping into real life. It's extremely confusing. I didn't know what was happening to us. Uh, and as a non religious person, at one point later on, I went to Peterborough Cathedral to speak to a priest because I was so confused and worried that I didn't know what to make of it all. When my son moved in, he was 14 in 2015. Just a few, maybe 5 6 months later, I thought it was all done, all finished, whatever it had happened, it was finished with. But we went for a walk out the back here in some fields which are really isolated, and this was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, broad daylight, big blue sky. We're about to walk into the woods as we talk, and that feeling that had happened in the garden fell on me again. Hair on the back of the neck, very dark, dangerous feeling of imminent danger. And he felt it too. Suddenly, the feeling had a direction coming up from behind me, so I turn automatically to look up and see a black cylindrical object dark behind the only puffy white cloud, very low, not even 1,000 feet up, a few 100 feet up. It was just so out of place. This object, cylindrical, as if it was absorbing the light, just blacker than black. And as it darted behind the cloud, I kept my eye on it, expecting for anything prosaic to come out the other side. Hot air balloon, fighter jet, whatever it might be. It's not doing normal things. I asked my son, "Did you see that?" He said, "Yeah, Dad, did you see it too?" And he described the exact same thing I'd just seen. Now, I felt so concerned about the intensely um, negative feeling that I had that I grabbed him to get out of there. And what concerns me is that's when we both have no recollection of leaving that field. And so what happened next, a quick succession. That night, I had the only experience of sleep paralysis I've ever had in my life, with the feeling of more than one something to my left. I was too scared to look over, forced myself back to sleep. The following day, late morning, about 11 a.m., my baby, my little boy was a baby at the time. He was asleep on the sofa in the living room downstairs here. And he woke up in a startling cry. So I grabbed him, picked him up to comfort him. And as I turned, I noticed movement out of the corner of my right eye. I look over, and there's made me jump out of my skin. My heart skipped a beat. I launched off the ground. There was a child-size shadow, semi-transparent but three-dimensional being, object, person, whatever you want to call it. This thing just was leaning in with its skinny arm, its oversized head, in the doorway between my kitchen and living room. And as I jumped and launched, it glided fast across my living room out the back door that was open. Now, I didn't say anything to my son about this, my 14-year-old, because he was out that night. He'd been freaked out about what happened the day before in the field. That following day, when he came back from staying out, he came running up the stairs when I was in the shower, getting out the shower, I think. And he was really scared and said that, Dad, I just saw in the living room while he was doing his hair in the mirror. So it was reflecting to him what was the location of the doorway that it was in for me the day before. He said this person was like a shadow, ran up through the room behind him. And that's when poltergeist stuff started happening. In this very room was my teenage boy's room at the time, his bedroom. And I think you can see it on the camera. This door handle, his bed was just here. He had his friend over in the day. I was out shopping, and when I came back, he wasn't here. He called me up and said, "Dad, we ran out the house. I'm not coming home. The house is haunted," because the door handle was violently shaking and then flung open. And they thought it was me messing around, pranking them. I don't do that kind of thing. Certainly not in the midst of something like what we were experiencing. The door flung open, and it scared them so bad they ran out of the house. He refused to come home. He said, later on, kitchen cupboards were doing the same thing when I wasn't in the house. So anyway, it got really dark and really scary and negative, and I didn't know. I was confused. I was baffled. I didn't know what on earth was going on. I didn't know there was any kind of link with these things. And a long time had passed until I finally captured something in 2017. A long time had gone past since all of that in 2015. It's a couple of years. And one day at work, I was just waiting to get to work on this site at the Peterborough Power Station. It was the 17th of July 2017. And I just happened to glance up. For some reason, I put my eyeball straight on a little black dot in the blue sky. And this was coming towards me in a straight line. And I'm looking at it thinking, is that a drone? Because it was spherical, it became more and more apparent that this is just a sphere. It was reflecting light. It looked dark, like a dark metallic sphere. And of course, now I'm thinking, wow, I have my phone in my hand. This time I'm going to record it. And I managed to capture a video of this thing just sitting above the tree line. The wind direction is going this way. And this thing just sits there, goes up over the course of about 20 minutes. I managed to capture 3 clips of it. As it goes up, rises up, hangs around, sits still for a while, and then eventually heads off over the tree line to my left. And I wish I could have chased it, but I couldn't. I was stuck where I was, what I was doing. After that, I was driving and I had 3 amber balls of light, which drew my attention one night as I was driving back to base for work. And I glanced over and initially thought it was a plane crashing, because if you see these lights heading straight down vertically towards the ground, very low tree level by the time I saw it, and they swooped up at quite a distance, maybe a quarter of a mile away, quite far, but it was flatlands of the fens around here. It's very open flatland countryside. So I see these things swoop up and I thought, wow, it's a plane crashing or something, and realized that they start to head towards where I'm heading. Quite quickly, it looks like these things are going to intercept my position if I maintain my speed and direction. So I keep glancing at them, thinking, what are they? A drone? Something else? You always think prosaic, you always think of something normal that these things should be, as it becomes more apparent and obvious that it's not anything normal. And as they got so close, I could see that they were just simply 3 horizontally positioned balls of amber orange light that were not connected by anything at all, completely silent, size of beach balls. And basically, if I'd have stood on top of the vehicle I was driving when they passed over, I could have literally touched them. They were that close. And off they went. I had no way of
Okay.
stopping.
Max, you've had quite a variety of experiences. So you mentioned some of the physical effects. Some of them were sensations like tingling. You had like a static electric almost effect, an incident of sleep paralysis. Were there other effects that you experienced after these encounters?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been quite sensitive, um, but it's quite subtle, Debs, but I felt at the time like the sensitivity was heightened. Um, whether that's just my misinterpretation, but I had something which I don't think many people would be open to talk about publicly, but I think I should, and I hope I'm just wrong on this. But I had, leading back to about 2015, after the sleep paralysis thing, I had a loss of sensation sexually. I hope you don't mind me talking about this. I should have asked first, but what happened is that became problematic, let's say, and I spoke to doctors about it. They tested for diabetes, no diabetes. They tested for other things. They sent me to a urologist. Um, it's not multiple sclerosis. They tested for MS because that can be none of that. So they couldn't find a reason for it. Later in 2017, I did pop an inguinal hernia and had that repaired. And what I did, because I seem to be the king of denial, I'm very good at denial. I tried to tell myself, well, maybe it's just that. Certainly after the operation, I think it may have caused some damage, but it might it's still functional. Everything's okay, but I'm just saying that I had some problems from 2015, which have never fully recovered. Which I hope I'm wrong. Like I say, I hope I'm wrong that it wasn't something that was done to me, but I think it's worth talking about.
Did you talk to the doctors about your UAP encounters when you were going through those medical issues?
Nope, no, I didn't, because the whole reason what's funny though is none of us talked about it for years and years. I think about 7 years. None of us talked about it. It deeply affected me, left me so confused and frustrated that it was beginning to send. How can I put it? When I would a couple of times I tried to talk to my girlfriend about my confusion and I need answers. I need to know what it was. I need to know what happened to me, what happened to us. And I would become hyper emotional. I can only correlate this to trauma because I've never had this before. I've had plenty of traumatic experiences in my life. Um, Almost been killed a few times in a few different ways, and lots of other things have happened to me that should be that are traumatic. But I've never had such a response as I did with this. Several years later, if I tried to talk about it, I would shake, I would start to cry, and it was overwhelming, powerful emotional response if I made myself think about it and try. So
Did
my
you
girlfriend was, sorry, go ahead.
did you ever speak to a therapist
No,
regarding these incidents?
no. My girlfriend said to me, and this is what caused me to go online to seek self help. Really, 2 years ago, I guess it was now. Is the last time I stood in front of her and had a breakdown of shaking about it, saying, I need to know what it was. I'm so frustrated. I need answers. I needed help, but I didn't know where to turn. And she was saying, you need to speak to someone. Maybe you should speak to a doctor. And I was, I didn't want to be the usual, right? Ridiculed, disbelieved, ridiculed, told that I need some medication. Maybe I'm seeing things. I knew it was real, so I didn't want the what's the word, the embarrassment of that, or to be disbelieved, brushed off.
Right.
So it was when I met you and DJ and Nathan. You guys really helped me. Because you gave me an avenue to be able to talk about it, and also I began by my girlfriend said, "Why don't you write it down? Maybe that will help." And it did. I wrote it down. I decided to contact some people at MUFON. Had the director of MUFON, Jack Turnbull, at the time for the UK, called me a few times to talk to me, and it was emotional. I mean, this was several years later. Several years later. Now, after 2 years roughly of repeatedly talking about it over and over, I now have a very minimal response. And sometimes the hair will go up on the back of my neck. I'll get those tingles, but I feel what's the word? Fixed. I feel cured of my
Okay.
hyper emotional response.
If you had been able to speak to your providers, medical or, otherwise, about what happened with your UAP encounter, do you think that would have been beneficial to you?
Depends entirely on their response. Personally, I've had so many negative encounters with GPs in the UK. It's a bit of a messed up system we have. Apparently, you have a GP with a name, but if you ever try to get an appointment these days, good luck. It could be 2 weeks away. And if you do get to see someone, it's never the same person twice. It's so depersonalized now. And I think my problem also is that I'm not someone who likes to make a fuss about myself. So I could hurt myself real bad and I'll just ignore it and get on with things. I won't bother seeing a doctor. Um,
Okay.
so, yeah.
So, what would you think would be the best way for someone who is a doctor or a therapist to help an experiencer?
Well, if they can, if they have an open mind, it's a tough one to do because it's certain character types, right, and experiences, life experiences. So if you get a doctor who doesn't believe in such things, that thinks that these things are just not real, then of course the response is going to be not good for the person trying to open up to them, and that's the biggest fear for people. Uh, so how would you convert every doctor out there to be to, if there was official training, official information provided globally to all doctors and medical practitioners to say, if someone talks to you about these experiences, they have been confirmed as being real. These things do exist. People are impacted by them. Please take it seriously. That's you'd have to really. It would have to be a really big global effort, I think.
And besides talking to people and writing about your experiences, what do you think was most beneficial for you for healing?
I think just that talking about it enough that what I've noticed is by talking about it, going over it, allows you the emotional response lessens, weakens each time, piece by piece. So over 2 years of talking about it a million times, feels like um, it it has helped to make me feel much more at ease. Like it's the weight is off my shoulders. Um, it never leaves me, and I still have the same questions, but the frustration of not having answers has lessened, weakened. So,
Well, thank you so much, Max, for coming and sharing your encounters and your thoughts and viewpoints. It was very brave of you, and I've always appreciated that you've been brave about sharing. Do you have any final things that you want to say to listeners about this in regards to the medical and psychiatric issues?
yeah, I just want to thank you, Debs. You've been a great help, and it's so good what you're doing because you are providing priceless help for people that are in need. I can only say, use my own experience of anyone out there who's gone through something like this. You're not alone. There are other people, plenty of other people, and try to just talk it out of yourself, out of your system until you feel. It will take a long time. This stays with you forever. You'll never get over it fully, but you need to talk about it. You need to talk about it. And people like Debs and UAP Meds, absolutely amazing what you're doing. So thank you so much, Debs.
Thank you. And do you want to tell people where they can find you if they need to talk to you or have a question?
Well, yeah, I only really use Twitter, but I haven't for a few months now. I was thinking of going back online. I kind of miss Twitter. So what am I? What am I? Max dot e dot McCabe. Is it Max E Mc? That's it. Max E McCabe at Max E McCabe. I think. Let me just confirm that. I haven't used it for so long. Yeah, at Max E McCabe. McCabe with a double C. That's I'll get back on Twitter.
Okay, just be prepared for what's going on there. The
Uh
okay,
oh.
well, you have thank you again, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you to everyone who listened. I really appreciate that you're willing to learn some new things and try to help us with, you know, educating professionals on this. Thank you to everybody. Okay,
Thank you,
bye.
Debs.